Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a time when England was, well, a political powder keg. And its theaters? They absolutely exploded with some of the most spectacular, satirical, and, frankly, shocking plays ever written. It's a story all about how immense pressure can create some seriously brilliant theatrical diamonds.
Okay, so let's dive right into this timeline. Think of this as our roadmap for a seriously turbulent 46 years. We kick off with the end of a golden age, we move through two pretty controversial kings, and we end with a civil war that literally brings down the curtain on English theater. Everything we're about to see happens inside this pressure cooker.
So where does all this kick off? Well, it all starts in 1603 with the death of the legendary Queen Elizabeth I. I mean, after decades of relative stability, she was gone, and her passing left this massive power vacuum that plunged the entire nation into this period of deep, profound uncertainty. Everyone was on edge.
To put it simply, society was a total tinderbox. You had a new Scottish king with let's say, a complicated past. You had simmering religious tensions, a growing power struggle between the crown and parliament, and this constant, nagging thread of plots and conspiracies. And right in the middle of all this chaos, the theater became the one place where these fears could be publicly confronted or spectacularly escaped.
So how did the public theaters respond to all this? Well, instead of, shying away from the tension, playwrights did something pretty bold. They held up a dark, often distorted, mirror to this anxious society, reflecting all of its flaws, its violence, and its moral corruption right back at the audience.
All right, so our first guide into this gritty world is the brilliant and, frankly, pretty combative Ben Jonson. Now, this wasn't some sheltered academic. His own life was just as dramatic, controversial, and full of conflict as any of the plays he wrote. See, this is the key thing about Jonson. He wasn't just writing about conflict. He was living it. From duels to prison sentences, the man lived right on the edge, and he poured all of that sharp, witty, and often dangerous energy directly onto the stage.
Now, he wasn't really interested in the simple comedies about mistaken identity that were popular. Jonson wanted to get under the skin of the city, to really dissect its psychology. So he created this whole new style of play that was less about funny situations and more about the powerful internal obsessions that drive people to the absolute edge.
And this, right here, was pretty much his worldview in a nutshell. He saw London as this chaotic collection of people, each one driven to extremes by a single, overriding obsession. Whether it was a con man's bottomless greed or a jealous husband's paranoia, these humors completely controlled his characters. And that perfectly mirrored the anxieties of an age where it felt like everyone was being pulled around by powerful, unseen forces.
But Jonson wasn't the only one exploring this darkness. While he was using satire to expose society's flaws, you had playwrights like John Webster who took a totally different path. Webster's plays, like The Duchess of Malfi, were set in these corrupt Italian courts and were just filled with sensational violence, political intrigue, and this palpable sense of, quote, brooding evil.
Now you have to understand, audiences were eating this stuff up, all the grit and intensity. But at the same time, they were also craving a bit of romance, some wit, and maybe a little bit of hope. So in response, playwrights like Francis Bowman and John Fletcher perfected this new hybrid genre that gave the people exactly what they wanted.
I mean, think about it. You get all the suspense, all the danger, all the high stakes of a tragedy. But then, right at the last second, a twist allows for a happy ending. It really shows you that even while staring into the abyss, audiences were still desperate for the relief of a clean escape.
Okay, so while all that is happening in the public theaters, the royal court was busy creating a completely different world. This wasn't a mirror, not at all. This was a magnificent, almost mind-bending escape into pure fantasy. This was the world of the court masque. And when I say magnificent, I am not kidding. Just look at this number. This was the cost of a single performance. King James I often spent more on one of these private shows than he did on all the other professional theater for his entire reign. We're talking spectacle on an absolutely unimaginable scale. So the thing to get about masks is that they weren't really plays. They were these huge, elaborate, allegorical parties, where the nobles themselves were the performers. And here's the kicker. No matter what the plot was, they all ended the same way, reinforcing the idea that the monarch was a divine, heroic figure bringing order to chaos. For a monarchy feeling the pressure, this was basically political PR wrapped in gold leaf and glitter.
So who was the mastermind behind these unbelievable spectacles? Well, it was a guy named Inigo Jones. And he wasn't a playwright, he was a designer and an architect. A genius who single-handedly revolutionized what was visually possible on an English stage. Jones was a true revolutionary. He literally goes to Italy and comes back with all these secrets of Renaissance stage design, things no one in England had ever seen before. We're talking painted perspective scenery, complex machinery, revolving platforms. He created illusions that seemed like actual magic to the Jacobean court. He could make it look like gods were flying down from the heavens or change a stormy sea into a peaceful forest in the blink of an eye.
So for nearly 40 years, you have these two incredible, vibrant worlds of theater existing side by side. The public stage is a gritty mirror, and the court stage is a fantastic escape. But that political pressure cooker we talked about? Well, it was finally about to boil over and basically extinguish the flame for good. I mean, it seems impossible, right? After producing some of the greatest plays in the English language, from Jonson's witty comedies to Webster's dark tragedies and Jones's stunning spectacles, how could all of that just stop?
The answer is stark, and it is swift. The simmering conflict between the king and parliament finally just exploded into the English Civil War. And when the country splits apart like that, well, there's no money left for fancy masks, and there's sure no tolerance for plays. The Puritan-led parliament, which saw theaters as dens of moral corruption, officially ordered every single one of them shut down.
And just like that, the lights went out. For 18 long years, the stages that had hosted Shakespeare, Jonson, and Webster fell silent. An entire, incredible era of groundbreaking theater was brought to an abrupt and total halt, not to be revived until the monarchy itself was restored.
It's interesting. The Jacobean and Caroline era never really chose. It gave us both, in a spectacular way. It really reminds us that in times of crisis, we turn to stories not just to understand the messy reality of our world, but also to dream of a better, more magical one. So the question it leaves us with is, which one do we need more?